This is the story of a 6-minute war. A war fought not with bullets, but with muscle and wood. And like any war, it began with a gamble. An impossible, illogical, insane gamble. The 1936 Berlin Olympics, the final most prestigious event, the men's 8-oared crew. This was meant to be the ultimate validation of Hitler's master race theory. Germany had already won gold in 5 of the 6 previous rowing finals that day. This was to be their coronation. Their opponents were the polished crews from Great Britain, the powerful Italians rowing for Mussolini, and the Swiss. And then there were the Americans. 9 young men from the far edge of the American continent, the sons of loggers, fishermen, and dirt farmers. They were never supposed to be here, but their biggest problem wasn't the wind or the crowd, or even the 2 fascist empires they were about to race. Their biggest problem was sitting in the boat with them, Don Hume. He is the human metronome, the man who sets the rhythm for the entire crew, and he is critically ill, burning with a fever from a severe respiratory infection that has ravaged his body for days. He is delirious, 14 pounds underweight, and barely conscious. Just that morning, his coach had declared him too sick to row, but the other 8 men delivered an ultimatum, an act of loyalty that defied all logic. They told their coach, "We row with Don Hume, or we don't row at all." It was all 9 of them, or none of them. So here they are, on the biggest stage in the world, with a sick man at the heart of their boat, in the worst lane, in front of Adolf Hitler. The gamble has been made. How did it come to this? How did 9 working-class kids who had been forged in the crucible of the Great Depression end up here, on the brink of history or humiliation? To understand the miracle of Berlin, you can't start at the finish line. You have to start in the dirt. The America that forged these boys was a nation on its knees. The stock market crash of 1929 wasn't just a financial event, it was a psychological cataclysm. It shattered the country's faith in itself. Survival was a daily grinding battle against hunger and hopelessness. And for the boys of the University of Washington, a public commuter college, this wasn't history, it was life. Nowhere was this battle more personal than in the life of Joe Rance. His story isn't one of gentle hardship, it's a saga of outright abandonment. After his mother died, his father remarried. At 15, Joe came home from school to find the family car packed. His father and stepmother drove away, leaving him behind to fend for himself in a half-finished cabin as winter approached. Imagine that loneliness. He survived like a creature of the woods, poaching salmon from the river and cutting cedar shingles to sell for pennies. He learned a lesson that became etched into his soul. You can only ever rely on yourself. The idea of trusting 8 other men with his fate was not just foreign to him, it was a violation of his very existence. But if Ulbrichtsen was the team's stern father, George Pocock was its spiritual guide. A world-renowned boat builder, he was a philosopher who spoke in wood. He taught the boys that rowing was an art form, a symphony of motion. Harmony, balance, and rhythm, he'd tell them, they're the 3 things that stay with you your whole life. He gave their brutal, repetitive labour a sense of higher purpose. He taught Joe Rance, the boy who trusted no one, that to find true strength, he had to surrender his ego to the boat. What Pocock described poetically, Ulbrichtsen demanded physically. He was chasing the swing, that magical moment when 8 individual heartbeats find a common pulse, when 8 men become one entity, moving in perfect harmony. For months, it was a discordant mess. The pain was immense. Their hands were raw and blistered, their lungs burned. But slowly, through millions of strokes, an alchemy began to work. They started to anticipate each other, to feel each other. They were learning the language of trust. And the man who wove it all together, the conductor of this burgeoning symphony, was the ninth man, Bobby Mock, the coxswain. His role was a paradox: to be the most important man in the boat while being the only one not pulling an oar. He was their eyes, their ears, their on-the-water CEO. He knew who was fading, who was panicking. He was a master psychologist and a battlefield general, and it was his mind that would have to navigate them through the storm that was coming. Before they could dream of Berlin, they had to conquer America, and in the 1930s, the undisputed kingdom of college rowing was Poughkeepsie, New York. This was the national championship. The Western upstarts were seen as a curiosity, but they did more than compete. They accomplished a feat never before seen in the history of the regatta, a complete sweep, winning the freshman, junior varsity, and varsity national titles. It was an unprecedented display of dominance. They were champions. But their victory wasn't a ticket to the Olympics. It was a bill. The American Olympic Committee informed the team they would have to pay their own way to Germany. The cost was $5,000, an impossible sum in the depths of the Depression. The dream was about to die on the rocks of poverty. But then something extraordinary happened. The city of Seattle, a city of lumberjacks, fishermen, and factory workers, adopted these 9 boys as their own. People who had next to nothing gave what they could. In a matter of days, the money was raised. A city and a nation, desperate for a hero, had found 9 of them. When they disembarked in Germany, they stepped into a meticulously crafted illusion. The Third Reich had hidden its brutal nature behind a mask of hospitality, but the boys felt the unnerving undercurrent, and then their carefully constructed unity faced its greatest threat. Don Hume collapsed. The stoic rhythm setter of the boat was wasting away with a severe respiratory infection. As the pragmatist coach prepared a substitute, the crew made their stand. The boy who was abandoned, Joe Rance, now refused to abandon his teammate. Their journey, the hopes of their city, the years of sacrifice, all of it was gambled on the unbreakable bond between them. Which brings us back to the rain-swept waters of the Langer Sea and the start of a 6-minute war. The first 500 meters, disaster. The start is a mess. They fall behind. Instantly, the German and Italian crews jump out to a commanding lead. The American boat is lost in their wake, languishing in last place. The race looks over before it has even begun. At the 1,000-meter mark, halfway, they are still disastrously behind. Conventional wisdom is to save energy for a final sprint, but there would be no sprint if they were a football field behind. Bobby Mock looks at Don Hume rowing like a ghost. He looks at Joe Rance pulling with desperate, unsynchronized power. He makes a gamble, a decision that will either win them the race or see them collapse in spectacular failure. He decides to go now. He begins to talk to them, his voice cutting through their fog of pain. He calls out their names, their hometowns, reminding them of the people who scraped together pennies to send them here. He calls for a power 10, a sequence of gut-wrenching strokes at maximum effort. The boat surges. He calls for another and another. He is asking them to sprint for a full 1,000 meters. It is insane. It is unsustainable. It is their only chance. and deep within their shared exhaustion, they find the swing. It locks in. The 1,500-meter mark, the surge. From the outer darkness, they emerge. They are no longer just a boat, they are a phenomenon, a cedar arrow flying across the water. They are rowing at an impossible 44 strokes per minute, a rate of self-destruction, yet they are getting faster. The finish, a war of inches. They enter the final stretch, a breathtaking, horrifying spectacle. 3 nations, 3 ideologies, 3 boats straining for a sliver of history. The Germans for their Führer, the Italians for Mussolini, and the Americans, 9 nobodies for each other. Bobby Mock has nothing left but his voice, and he gives it all. Joe Rance takes one last desperate look and puts every ounce of his lonely, defiant life into the oar. They make one final, agonizing lunge for the line. The finish is a blur. They slump over, their bodies utterly broken. They have no idea what just happened. For what felt like an eternity, there was only the sound of ragged breathing. Who had won? The human eye could not say. Then the results became official. First place, the United States of America. Second, Italy. Third, Germany. They had won by 0.6 of 1 second. A single defiant heartbeat. In front of Adolf Hitler, a crew of American cast-offs from the worst lane with a sick rower after a disastrous start had won Olympic gold. Their victory was a fleeting 6-minute rebellion. They returned home not to fame and fortune, but back to the lives they had left behind. They finished their degrees, fought in the coming war, raised families. They became builders, engineers, doctors, and lawyers. Joe Rance, the abandoned boy, worked as a chemical engineer at Boeing for 35 years. Bobby Mock, the master strategist, earned a law degree from Harvard and argued a case before the US Supreme Court. They proved that their true character was not defined by a single race, but by a lifetime of quiet dignity. The story of the boys in the boat is more than a story about winning. It's about the alchemy of unity, how 9 disparate souls, forged in hardship, can be melded into something greater than the sum of their parts. It's a testament that hope is not a luxury, but a necessity, and that true strength is rarely loud or arrogant, but is often found in the quiet, resilient heart of the underdog. They showed the world that a symphony of muscle and wood, powered by grit and grace, could create an echo that would ripple through time, reminding us forever what we are capable of when we choose to pull together.